Where are you going? Stop! No, just let me love you! No, no! You're mine now. Oh, there's a whole entire village full of cats. Best game ever. 10 out of 10. Hello, everyone. With that joke out of the way, because I know I'm a crazy cat man. I am a bit late. Actually, a lot late to this game. So, as an explanation, I'm going to keep it brief because I don't like sharing with people, and I don't think people really like it when YouTubers share too much. But my mom had a bit of a heart issue, which involved surgery, which kept me busy when I wasn't working. And she's finally in a better place where I don't have to attend to her or keep her company and stuff while she's in the hospital. With that out of the way, Crimson Desert. Well, I'm not entirely sure where to start. This is more or less gonna be a first impressions, even though I'm like 60 hours into the game and I still haven't left tutorial land. Mainly because I'm easily distracted, and there is plenty to do in this game, which can be viewed as a good thing depending on your point of view on terms of what they have you doing. So, needless to say, it is very much apparent that Crimson Desert is definitely, let's say, inspired by a lot of games to the point where it's kind of a hodgepodge of everything popular in the last 10 to 15 years slapped into one game. Although it may be a bit of a hodgepodge, it's a hodgepodge that I'm enjoying, and there are original elements to it as well. Now, there's also things that I don't particularly care for, and I've gotten used to, but I still think are a bit on the side. Then there are things that I actually really like. Now, my first impressions aren't going to cover the original version of the game because they've long since updated it before I even started playing it. So there's been a few tweaks here and there that I'm very much aware of. So let me get some of the things that I kind of find a little irritating out of the way. Like, for instance, here, when I'm forced to swim in water that Cliff can clearly stand up in. The sheer amount of stuff in the game does get a touch absurd to the point where you will just be prompted to pick up insects of any kind in front of you to the point where it actually interferes when I'm trying to assassinate a guy. Unfortunately, I don't have footage for it, but can't assassinate the guy because it's like, you want to pick up this spider, this cockroach, this butterfly, this grasshopper? Bows don't feel good to use. There's too much auto aiming and they feel too weak, even after upgrading them. I mean, outside of a handful of enemies that I've ran into at this point in time, like a couple that fly around, I mainly just use it to hunt the things they won't let me hit on the ground with my sword, which I don't know if that was originally a thing because I watched a video and they showed them attacking like little birds of some kind on the ground, and now I can't hit anything that's a tiny little animal on the ground with a sword at all. So I don't know if they nerfed that. But as a result, I use a boatload of arrows to hunt down a bunch of little creatures for their meat, skins, bones, and everything else. The biggest issue I have is having to pull out your lantern to target somebody to talk with them specifically. I don't know why they just didn't put a white dot in the middle of your screen that you can sort of indicate what you're looking at and do it that way instead of me having to constantly pull out my lantern to interact with very specific things. But yes, those are the things that drive me nuts the most about this game. Outside of that lantern used to specifically interact with specific targets, they do have an interesting thing where you can switch between weapons using a radial menu. It also includes changing armor as well. It is very Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom inspired. Now, this might be a little bit of a case of too much to play with or work with all the toys and swords, weapons, spears, tools that you can just absolutely stuff your inventory full with. I mean, it's ridiculous how much you can just go through and interact with, but you can also just go into the pause menu and work with it there as well. And yes, the interface was a bit janky and it took some time to get used to it, but I eventually did. Now, aesthetically, the game is actually very impressive. It's very Red Dead Redemption 2 ish as well, in terms of how it sort of appears and looks. I'm not talking like Western, but like it's just absolutely full of critters and trees and grass and stuff. It is densely packed full of visuals, and I guess in my case, because everything's at ultimate, which it just that's what it said. It's like ultimate. When I'm hunting birds and stuff, if there's too much foliage, I can't find them, and they're just gone before I can even get a chance to hunt them down and kill them. Now, I will say one thing for sure: when it comes to resource gathering, at least when it comes to the chopping down of trees, you can just go up to pretty much any tree and chop it down and get wood from it, which is something that I've wanted for ages. I mean, it's probably been done. I just can't recall anything off the top of my head. I mean, sort of with Tears of the Kingdom slash Breath of the Wild, but what has much more usage in this game versus that. So that's what I'm getting at. I mean, I guess that's also like every survival game. So that's but usually in games outside of survival games, you have to gather branches or something like that. Or if they do have trees, they're very specific trees that appear at certain points in time. This was just nice to be able to pick a tree and just chop it down. And when you have a pet, like the cat I have following me, makes gathering resources a lot easier because the pet will pick it up for you, which I think was a remnant from what was the game that this was supposed to be a sequel to, but they turned into a single player? Black Desert, that's what it was. So resource gathering isn't that tedious of a thing, particularly when you have a pet that'll gather a lot of it for you. Now, when it comes to fishing, because it's an open world game, it's got to have fishing. I don't use the rod most of the time. I just jump in the river and grab the fish. If I had bombs like Breath of the Wild, I'd probably be doing that instead. Now, combat actually, it's kind of a mixed bag. You get a lot of little peons that you just absolutely slaughter. But that's not always the case. Like if you go into an area where you're a bit undergeared and a little bit unprepared, like where I was here, they can absolutely trample you into the ground and devastate you in a heartbeat. But they will have situations where you just fight wave after wave after wave of enemies. And it's surprisingly fluid, and there's a ton of combos, probably a little bit to its detriment because I can't remember how to do most of it, and I usually stick to more or less basic attacks. I mean, yeah, there's a few things that I do remember, like the stab and stuff, but there's some really fancy moves that I totally just forget that I've learned, and the combos to perform them are kind of obscure and weird. They don't feel intuitive. It's like hitting both the right bumper and the trigger at the same time, kind of thing. Your brain just doesn't like, hey, let's push these buttons together and watch things work. That is, in my opinion, the weakest part of the combat in the game, are the weird combos that they have. I mean, it's still rather fluid, flashy, and enjoyable to do, especially on the small little guys that you just absolutely murder. Now, I will admit one thing. I'm really bad about remembering to parry, and I have a tendency to spam the dodge button, which it works for the small guys, but there are bosses in the game where that's just not the best idea is to spam the dodge button. So I guess that leads to the bosses themselves, which feels distinctly different from just fighting the peons. And of course, yes, it's going to. I mean, it has that weird tradition where they make the bosses much bigger than everybody else. And they pull out combos and stuff, but even though your combos that you use are still the same and the buttons and everything that you would use on the little itty bitty peons, it just has a very distinct feel from when you fight them to fighting bosses. So as a result, every time I fought like a boss, I usually get my ass kicked multiple times before I'm like, yeah, you know what? Let's figure this out. And it took me forever to figure out that the dodge button doesn't dodge by distance; it dodges with a small little invulnerability window here. Particularly this guy right here, a Tumbra's sword. Yeah, he beat the crap out of me before I finally figured out that I needed to dodge at a very specific time, and I just couldn't spam it. Although it did lead to a couple of moments where, yes, I dodged, and I was distinctly and very much outside of where his sword landed, but because reasons and maybe like the world's largest hit boxes, which I it seems like Asian developers have a tendency to do. They're like, yeah, we'll just have large hitboxes. The sword would miss me by like a good solid 2 feet, and it would still count as a hit. And in this case right here, there's something else that sort of drove me nuts is the game still continues when you pause for a few seconds, but it'll still continue. And I was like, what? And I fought this boss kind of the hard way. Apparently, there's an easier way using focus. I think they may have actually nerfed it because I looked it up later and tried it with just plain enemies. And what they said was supposed to happen wasn't happening. So I don't know if they nerfed it because it made bosses like this way too easy. But it involved auto pairing, and I maxed out the focus, and he definitely was not auto pairing. So I don't know. I am really bad about looking at patch notes. Now there are some aspects of this game that I don't consider good or bad, just kind of in between. Like if you want to steal stuff, you have to wear a mask, which doesn't make sense because I'm wearing a helmet that covers my face more than the mask. And I know I mentioned this before, but like the sheer amount of stuff in the game. Sure, having things to do isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when your map is as big as this one, it still feels a little bit spread out at times. With the only thing that you really have to kill are the wildlife, which there's at a point where that is unnecessary and pointless, so I stopped doing that. And the bows, when they auto target things, but they only auto target big objects or animals in this case, I don't get why they don't have it target the smaller ones, like geese or maybe like the kiwis, some of the little mammals like the squirrels or something like that. And I'm still basically in tutorial land, mainly because, like I said, I got distracted and I haven't gone through all the main story missions where they tell you what you can and can't do. So there might be reasons for me to gather things like insects, but like the sheer amount of insects in this game that I'm like, okay, I mean, I guess I could sell them. I mean, they're worth like a pittance, and I don't really see the point of it when you have a very limited capacity in terms of your inventory. And I guess I'll just touch on the skill tree where you get these little artifacts along the road or just get them off of corpses, and you have to do specific challenges to actually get them to unlock in order to be able to unlock skills, which is nice. They didn't let you just become a complete and total psychopath killing everything in sight in order just to progress. They added little bitty challenges to it so that you actually had to work for it. So right now I am enjoying it, and I'm kind of wondering how long it's going to take me to get through this game. I mean, like I said, I was like 68 hours in, and I still haven't left the beginning area. I mean, I did actually leave the beginning area into like I guess a border to the north when I was like at the 70 hour mark. But there's nothing going on there yet other than stuff that you can interact with, like caves and treasure chests and stuff like that. But no stories or quests, and I have no idea how those will eventually unlock. So I guess, let's say in the chat, what games do you think inspired this one? I mean, for me, I've obviously said Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Red Dead Redemption. Definitely would just say Souls games, particularly would say Elden Ring. I'm sure there's quite a list, but put your thoughts in the comments below on what you think they are. And if you made it this far into the video, thanks for watching. Have a good one.